Guys, welcome to the 28th episode of
The Journey for Greatness podcast. Guys, we are absolutely thrilled. Couldn't be more thankful. We have a gentleman on the line right now. He's been gracious enough to call in and give us a little bit of his time. His name is Jeff Emmerson, and he is the author. He's a writer. He's a teacher. Man, I don't know how we even connected. I know you followed us on Twitter. I looked at your Twitter page. I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty interesting. So I started digging. I sent you a message. I was up at like 5 a.m. one morning, and I sent you a message. I said, hey, we'd love to have you on the show. And you or your social media team, I'm assuming it's you. I know you have a pretty large following on Twitter, so I was like almost a kid in a candy shop. I sent it over to Eric, and I said, holy shit, like, Jeff just responded back. And he said he'd be all good to come on the show. So we were excited, man. We're really happy to have you on. So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm the one and only person that does the social media stuff. My wife helps me though with some of the graphics and other things on Instagram and stuff. But yeah, I love actually, though it's a fair following that I have for sure. I love to take time, in DMs and stuff to actually respond to people and engage. That's my whole thing. So I'm on there for hours each day doing that. So yeah, it was a pleasure. And again, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah.
By all means.
It's awesome. Well, I mean, we always start every episode and just kind of obviously get back to the beginning and kind of how, I think you said you're from Kitchener, Ontario, so how did your, I guess, beginning story, and I know we know Jeff Emmerson as an author and writer right now, but how did everything kind of start? Did you grow up playing hockey? Kind of take us back to the start of things.
Sure, yeah. A typical, I guess, also American story with a lot of kids, but Canadian ones for sure. 5 years old, I began, yeah, exactly. I began playing at 5 and right away fell in love with goaltending. Strapped on the pads, even though they were backwards, as I remember.
I wanted to be a goaltender at one point, and my dad was like, "You're going to start all over again." And I was like, I don't know about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, definite pros and cons to that one. People sometimes give you the funny look when they find out you're a goaltender, right? So. But yeah, it's one of those things, started off and obviously I don't know, I'm not sure which direction this will take, so I'm not sure what to mention, but I, grew up in a fairly standard home and a lot of stuff. I mean, the book is called Beyond ADHD, of course, but my big thing, if I can just throw this out there, fast forwarding obviously to now.
Definitely.
So people have have a general context or idea. My big thing is over the last, 5-6 years anyway, I've really had some major mental health related struggles and identity stuff and other things. So so that's what I'm doing now. General, it's not just ADHD, but talking about, dealing with a lot of the stuff, whether it's anxiety, depression, or, trying to figure out our goals, personal development. I find that, since I'd say junior high or high school for sure, I knew that from that athletic background and just being very driven, like you guys clearly are, playing at such a high level like you guys did, I just found that that's a driven, go-getter, dreamer type. Though some laughed at me along the way, I found that that's still how I'm hardwired. So yeah, I guess we can, feel free to guide me with any questions you have, and I'll just sort of go along with it, But yeah, standard upbringing, issues at home and all that stuff. But yeah, just let me know which way you want to go with it, and we can let it flow.
I guess one of the questions me and Tom, because we were on the phone for a few minutes before we actually hopped on, was in the book, because again, we've done some homework, we've listened to you talk about the book a little bit. Is it beyond ADHD? We know you were falsely diagnosed with ADHD.
was it a different form that you had, or was it something else?
Right.
When you were diagnosed?
Yeah, let me, as far as that goes, first of all, I lived with for a number of years classic symptoms of it, definitely. And I was diagnosed in 2011.
Just interrupt you real quick. What are the classic, because it's funny, this is actually near and dear to my heart, Jeff, because, it's funny, my mother, she was, and she'll probably be listening, she was an SBA, like a assistant for, kids that had different things going on with them, and one of them was either ADHD or ADD, so it's funny, she always would bust my chops and say, hey, I think you have tendencies of ADHD or ADD, so what are those classic symptoms like that? Because this is really resonating with me, and it's something, like, I'm probably going to buy your book just to get some insight and really dig in deep, because it's something I've always had in my mind. Hey, should I go get checked out? What should I do? I feel like I have these multitasking, not the hyper part of it, but just the multitasking and not focusing, like realizing 38 tasks down the list that you started doing something, originally, like you went to go get something out of the fridge, but you ended up folding laundry and this, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I meant to go get that thing out of the fridge, So what are the classic symptoms? Like, what were you dealing with?
Well, as far as the general classic ones, I mean, paying attention, inattention, as we know, is a hallmark trait of it. Things like, the standard, if you can picture, especially with boys anyway, trouble sitting still for even a short time, those kinds of things, a lot of squirming, fidgeting. Definitely impulsivity is a huge one as well. Acting out on impulse without, kind of related to what they call executive functioning issues. Keeping oneself in check or thinking before we do certain things, that type of thing. But those are a few off the top of my head. Also, something called hyperfocus, which I know extremely well, and I'm sure others out there do as well, where when we, of course, are interested and passionate about something, hours can go by, and we don't realize maybe on the computer or going back to hockey, I go to a store that sells goalie equipment, and, 3 hours have gone by, and I'm checking the latest stuff, and my wife's, not too happy about it, so... but those are a few things, but also, go ahead.
Oh no, keep going.
Oh, okay. Other things that can go with it, though. I mean, it's a bit of I could go on for a while here, right? But because of some of these symptoms, as you can imagine, things that commonly occur with them are anxiety, for sure. Racing thoughts at times that can spiral, I call it, into depression. That I can experience panic attacks, self-doubt, self-sabotage. For instance, I created a blog really quick, and I'll finish with this. I created a blog back in 2013 in the fall called the Adult ADHD Blog, I remember, and was into it about 10 months to put a lot of work in. And I built a fairly decent following. And because of a panic attack that I had about, career stuff and other things, I literally, in the moment, impulsively deleted the entire blog. And I still remember that. Yeah, and it was a lot of work.
I can relate, man. I actually had a blog that was called Battle Before My Dream, and it was when I was in college. That's weird that you say that. I had the exact same. It was almost like a what am I doing moment, like why am I doing this? This is so stupid. And then I literally just X'd out of that. But I was so passionate about it. It was so fun for me to have a blog in 2000, and I think it was 2009 when blogs were like, I don't know when blogs all started to get popular, but I felt like, what if I would have just continued on that path of, having that blog? And wow, that really resonates with me.
Yeah, and I know it can spiral, can it? Or it can be like what I didn't invent this term, but self-talk. Sometimes we reinforce, it's like the self-fulfilling prophecy thing. Like, I'd go all in with a goal, and there were tons of them, where I'd go all in and be super driven and tell people, I'm going to become this or that or whatever. I'm going to do something. But then once I ran up against the work that it would take, or I lost interest suddenly because I didn't realize, okay, this is going to take way more than I thought, I dropped it like that, and then my reputation went down the tubes. That was another thing with me, whether even something like trying the guitar or going to university or, a lot of other things, starting my own business at times, but then not being fully aware. I was quite naive as to the work ethic and the grind. I guess you could fill in the blanks if anyone out there has gone through this type of thing like you mentioned with the blog. But it's that self, the guilt, maybe the shame, the feeling like crap about yourself, like, oh, here we go again, and that can in itself, obviously there can be many reasons for this though other than ADHD, so I like to let people know that, because we're, just to transition for a second, because we're taught so much through the media that, if you've got these 6 or 8 symptoms, you should be checked. But there's what I share in the book, and again, I support everyone across the board, whether it's ADHD or not, of course, right? But I realized, and again, this would take its own show probably to explain the things that are easily misdiagnosed as ADHD quite commonly, and things we've got to watch out for and other stuff. But what the long story short for me is, even though, and I'll just throw this out there, even though I do still live with classic symptoms, we recognize that 2 things. Number one, issues in the home during childhood or childhood trauma and PTSD, as I look back, violence in the home. That's one factor. That PTSD is easily misdiagnosed, or it can coexist, but it's easily misdiagnosed as ADHD. And there's also, we found out about a year and a half ago, that I have a vision issue that was never detected or diagnosed, even though I've had glasses since grade 3. So, and this is like cutting edge ophthalmology stuff, vision therapy, that a lot of, your standard retail, when you get an eye exam at a standard retail place, a lot of them don't test for it. And it's called, for anyone who's interested, it's called convergence insufficiency. For anyone who, is listening back to this and wants to Google it. So I have a leading ophthalmologist in the book, and it's eye-opening stuff. And concussions, the symptoms can easily be misdiagnosed. And there are upwards of 100 other true root causes, from learning disabilities to allergies to hypoglycemia to thyroid issues to, I could just go on and on. And what I'm not trying to do is complicate it, obviously, but once I discovered all this, I thought, okay, here's, and I tried the standard, stimulants and all that stuff, but wasn't satisfied, and they didn't make much of a difference with me anyway, and that's just me. Though they do with some, for sure, that can be life-changing. But I thought, okay, this doesn't feel right. There's got to be more to this than just, expecting to pop a pill and have that just make everything awesome. Not to sound crude, right? But
are you talking about? Sorry to interrupt, but are you taking?
Oh, go ahead.
Are you talking about like taking pills like that, or because I guess one of the questions. One of the questions I was going to ask you is I work in addition to doing this as a passion, and hopefully, someday me and Tom can make this our full-time gig and go out there and try and help as many people as possible. But for now, my other gig is the fitness industry. I work in a gym. And so I guess a question I was thinking asking you was, and I heard you mention it on an interview before about, your thoughts on taking pills to cure or not. And I'm pretty sure you had said, well, whatever it is that you kind of need to do to, get rid of it, I'm all for it. But would you kind of would your first approach possibly be with no pills, maybe to try and do it like, I know some people try and, meditate and do other things? Because I actually, to be honest with you, I actually have a brother with ADHD along with a lot of other symptomatic things for other stuff. And I feel as though he just gets so dependent on it. So, for example, last night, he's like, Eric, I need to borrow $60. I need my pills. I can't concentrate. If I don't get them, I won't get this done. And I'm saying to myself, is it really like do you really need those pills? Or are you just so dependent on them now that you think you can't concentrate, you can't go the night without them?
Yeah, and you know what? That's a loaded area. And obviously I'm not a physician. I'm the first to say that, though I work with a lot of, in my books, I've been fortunate enough in building the social audience that I have. I've had people reach out of the woodwork, psychiatry and all these different areas, not just psychiatry, but, Harvard experts in education, nutrition experts, others. But I would say for that, it's case by case for sure. Definitely the rule of thumb, and to me, it's in hindsight, it just makes sense, so it's easy for me to say. But always, I would say, only treat or only add medication if it's a severe or moderate to severe issue where, and even hold off on a diagnosis. I suggest let's hold off on that. If someone has to be treated with medication desperately, then so be it. Try it out. Things can always change and evolve, and physicians need to know that they can also de-prescribe, and that's a whole other show, believe me.
Yeah.
Even from my own story of being on like 12 medications that I'm off of completely now, including blood pressure and other stuff. But 9 psychiatric meds I was on over 3 years. But yeah, getting back to that point, it's case by case, and I never want to generalize, right? Because I know people out there are some who definitely are helped as with medications. As Dr. Ned Hallowell says, I think he says it's one tool in the toolbox, but it's only one, and it can be life-changing to help people function enough to be stable, to do other things like, let's say different forms of therapy, or just function day to day. But I always say, that should never be the end all be all. Even if someone desperately needs the meds, they've got to do more work, and they need to be supported and have resources. That's a whole other issue as well in their community to learn. Mentors and others, whether it's fitness, whether it's nutrition, which is a huge factor, as you'll know, whether it's the education system, whether it's screen time, whether it's what are the person's day-to-day patterns, and what are they doing? Is it you got to put that under a microscope a bit first, I think. But yeah, I don't want to ramble on, but there's so much more to it. But we rush a lot to these diagnoses, and when in as little as 15 minutes in doctors' offices these days, and I've heard a lot of unfortunate stories about how very little is ruled out before ADHD, and it angers me, frankly, because I know the bigger picture now from my own story, right? So. I think in closing, I would say that, if someone's given the potential danger of a diagnosis is these couple things really quick. Identity and buying into it. Thinking, okay, do they see it as a quote unquote disability when, someone could have amazing abilities in other areas. I wonder if a lot of pro hockey players and others don't have these symptoms, or anxiety, or, they're just high strung, but they're phenomenal at what they do, but they need support in other areas. Or, and I'm just guessing, or pro athletes in general, and it shouldn't be looked at as a disability necessarily. We need to go all in and support people in whatever they're good in, right? That's one frame of mind. But the other danger is, dependency on medication, especially if someone's wrongly diagnosed. And as we know, stimulants, a lot of people are affected in some way, shape, or form, even if they don't have ADHD. Like a lot of, you hear about kids. A lot of parents have mentioned my kid's like a zombie now on these meds. So we've got to dig a lot deeper, and we do that with a neuroscientist in the book. Why stimulants affect people differently, even if they're wrongly diagnosed. Just because, the pills seem to work or quote unquote calm the child does not confirm ADHD. So isn't that a surprise? But a lot of people, and I get it, I knew nothing about this before I was diagnosed. And a lot of parents know nothing. They don't know how to dig deeper. They don't know what to ask to have ruled out first, or they can't afford it. especially in the U.S., right? But even in Canada, we got major issues. So, but I hope that helps. I know, again, it's a huge answer, but
no, definitely.
And your brother, your brother has my full support, of course, as everyone does. But it can get out of hand. These are addictive medications.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. So, I guess talking for yourself, because you just mentioned health, and you talked at the beginning about playing hockey. Is that something? Do you use those two things? Maybe healthy eating, and then maybe exercising. Do you use those things to, I guess you could say, your advantage to help with this ADHD at all?
Yeah, with these symptoms I have, absolutely. Oh, huge. Calming the mind. I just got back actually from a workout, skating workout. So yeah, it's, as you guys will know, again, I'm sure, you're so much calmer after. Sometimes I'm a little whooped, a little tired and can't do much, but other times, most of the time I find I'm just calmer and able through, again, nutrition. And, personally, I have a supplement line that I do use, but only minimally because whole food is the best, right? But,
it is.
But, and the only supplement I use is a post-workout and hydration, pre-workout, which is zero sugar, zero stimulants, all that stuff completely natural. So that helps me feel, after the workout, I'm not exhausted. But it's huge. It's huge. I think if we can get kids out in whatever way, and adults out from behind screens now and then, and I know it's, the world's going that way, right? We can't turn the clock back. But I think, a lot of people are so stressed and built up, and then you add the fact that when we were younger, even when we were all younger, food was better quality, I think, than what it is now. A lot of the quick foods the kids eat, and sugary drinks, and a lot of it garbage, frankly. So preservatives, high fructose corn syrup, other stuff. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than it is now. And I just, you go to the rink, right, again, to keep it to hockey for a moment if I can, and there are soda machines everywhere. And there's other stuff, and I get it. Parents are rushed, and but there's the whole bigger picture to look at. So yeah, for me, fitness and nutrition are huge. I would be spiraling. There'd be way more anxiety and self-sabotage if I wasn't doing that like 4 times a week, for instance. So, do you guys find the same?
Yeah,
I do.
I was going to say I've talked to Eric about this when I've had little stretches where I've actually lived my reality of what the visions for I have. So the vision that you have in your mind of, hey, I would love to, be able to grow this podcast and be able to, wake up, work with, if you want to go to the mountains because you're able to work, kind of that independent lifestyle. And I have that vision for myself. And, also I've had weeks where, I haven't done, whether it be yoga or different, working out, things of that nature. And you can just feel the difference when you actually get back to doing those things. I play street hockey. I try to play pickup soccer. So, actually seeking out those things that feel fun to me, but also give me that, exercise and sweat. So, yeah, I can't tell you, man, on a Saturday when I get up and I go play street hockey in the morning and then I get home and I'm just like, oh, my God, I'm so glad I did that. And that's what I don't get why I don't continue to do it. I go in those little bit of lapses. I know Eric's a little bit, we talk about this, the dynamic between him and I is Eric kind of been my accountability partner the last 6 or 7 days. I've woken up at 5 a.m. and he's called me. So I think a lot of times it's having somebody that may have a little bit more self-will and discipline to hold yourself accountable and recognize that you may not have it all put together right away. And so that's kind of what I'm feeling right now. So, but I 100% agree. It's something that I would love to do it every day if I could. Well, I can. I just need to have discipline to do it.
Well, and that brings to mind too. Remember, we all have days where we fall off or we don't, get something done or whatever. And that's another, I think, a huge part of this for people with or without these symptoms, frankly, everybody, especially younger people, self-care, self-compassion. I know they sound like, cliche terms, psychology, but it's so true. I found, when you have that day where you don't go or whatever else, not beating yourself up and then just sort of, like some people can anyway. I know I was in the past. I'd let it eat at me or wallow in it. Get back on the horse, get back and do your thing and whatever triggers, right? Everyone's different though. I know, I'm like, I always say there's no cookie cutter approach, right? We're all different. I get that. I'm not going to try to BS people with something, got to be authentic, of course, but yeah, whatever triggers you, whether it's music or whatever it is that gets you going, and finding your triggers, good triggers, to light you up, get you, even like when, we're a little sore and tired, just crank whatever it is, right? And then you feel better. Sometimes some of the best workouts, I find at least, come from days where I thought I'd have a crappy workout because I was sore or tired. I'm like, wow, okay, well, I'm glad I went, and then maybe you reward yourself with something or, whatever, right? So, and these are all things we already know, but we need to be reminded. And it's humbling, right? Oh yeah, I knew that already. Why didn't I remember? So that's okay. We're human.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Without a doubt. Yeah. So another thing I read up was you lost your brother to suicide before you had attempted it.
I did, I did, yes. Yeah.
So,
2008. Go ahead.
Yeah. So do you, with that, do you think he was kind of possibly going through the same thing? Can this kind of be almost a gene thing, do you possibly think?
Actually, it's good that you asked that because you know what? We weren't biologically related. We were stepbrothers, ironically. So, but very close. So he certainly, though, mental health is in the bloodline there. Absolutely, there's he's got relatives that the same thing happened to, one or two of them, sadly. But yeah, what I can say is that because of his suicide, and I'd have to look up the stats, but I know that, and suicide prevention is huge, as you can imagine. It's very close to my heart, and as I build my speaking career now, that's going to be a major area that I focus on. But obviously, right, God. But the odds of a second sibling also committing suicide once one has done it go up 8 times, or something to that effect. I remember reading, and the horror of it, the terror of it, and then just the devastation for anyone who's experienced it. And it never leaves. It's one of those things as well. So I think that I didn't really talk to anyone about that other than family. Which is very small. But yeah, that played a role, I think, not to use a fancy term again, but subconsciously, in my own sort of, I was struggling at that time, but then that was 2008. And then when he committed suicide, then 2011 is when I attempted, before, and then 2 years later, I should say, 2013, I committed myself because I was again feeling suicidal and planning. So yeah, there's a whole lot there, but yeah, it's, I guess I'll just stop there, sort of speechless.
Yeah, no, that's tough to process. I'm just glad that you got to that point where you dug in terms of the underlying knowledge and really like flip that, call it a mindset or whatever it is, but really investigating this stuff and then using that dark place. I was just at a self-esteem boot camp, and you talk about the suicide rate among men is, I think it's like, the guy had mentioned the stat, I don't know where it's from, but 70% or 80% is men out of the total number of people that do commit suicide. So, we're having a hard time. And I know Lewis Howes is coming out with a book called The Mask of Masculinity, and how men just will have a hard time communicating this type of stuff and really trying to dig into what is bothering us and not really feeling like we could go to mom or go to dad or, have somebody that we can talk to and let some of this stuff out, and just, let it roll. And I think it just continues to bottle up. And then, I don't know. I haven't been there personally, but, I just look at these, you talk about the stats, and it's like, it's a message and a passion that is kind of slowly becoming a passion for me, too, to really bring awareness of it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I actually wasn't aware of that stat, so thank you. As far as men.
Like I said, yeah, I have to get I have to get the source, but he's a guy that his Instagram is self-esteem maintenance, and so his passion is based off of the 6 pillars of self-esteem book, and he's kind of read that, distilled it down, and now he's really built a passion around trying to help people build up, men and women. But yeah, he shared that stat, and I was like, oh my god. And I know people that have been in the military and come out and they're really struggling, and I try to just continue to say, hey man, if you need it, like, you try to do what you can, and you understand that at some point somebody's going to try that. It's a hard thing to prevent, other than you just trying to be there, and really try to go over the top to be a support system for that person. I don't know, it's a tough subject.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I'm learning too, and I have people DM me, that are on the verge. I've had some, extremely, not to get too into detail, obviously, but I'm just saying it's one of those things where I have to remind myself, obviously I'm not trained, so, I learn and do the best I can, and try not to say, the wrong thing, obviously. It's such an intense thing. But ironically, a year after I committed myself, I did security in mental health units out in Calgary in children's and adult. I know it's, again, sort of a weird irony there, but before leaving because it was too heavy. But, it's one of those things where, we're not going to be perfect at it, but all we can do is at least listen and if you ever come across someone like that, even just listening. I know as men, and I'm certainly guilty of this, I want to just solve everything right away. And my wife reminds me regularly, just listen, just be there and listen. So that's been a little challenging at times, but we all do our best, right? So if it's something you're passionate about, even though it is heavy, it's certainly, a lot of important things aren't just easy and, you know what I mean, light, fluffy topics. We sometimes have to face the heavy stuff. But if it's something you're passionate about and it's legacy and it's just doing good, you find your own language for that. But it's always an honorable thing, So none of us are perfect. So just do your best, and I remind myself of that. So yeah.
We appreciate that, man. That's so. Let's move on to, like, where does somebody go from, say they're, because I can only talk on myself. I mean, I'm at a point where I do have a identity crisis, and where your self-worth is either wrapped up in a professional endeavor. I was trying to be a NASCAR pick remember or a hockey player, blah blah blah. And it's like you do have that identity crisis of what do I really want to do in life, and what would you tell a person in that kind of awkward transition period where maybe you don't have the money, you don't have the direct career path that you'd love to do? Like, that could be a dark place to navigate. So what would you say to that person?
You know what? First of all, what I do is just authentically share from my own experience. And if that resonates, great. If it triggers something in them, great. If not, obviously just keep speaking. But I base it on, and I'm going to do it right now. In 2013, in the psych ward or mental health unit, some people prefer that term. When I was researching ways again, even though I was newly married, but feeling horrible, and I was right in the middle of that, trying to build a business and not have to do the standard 9 to 5, but felt like garbage as a husband, and pretty much zero, to everyone around me, because I was trying so many things but failing and quitting too fast. So in the unit, when I committed myself, it was a light bulb that went off as soon as I went into, they had what were called groups, like group therapy sessions, and you had to participate. So I say to people, this is what happened to me anyway. So here's an example, first of all, and it may not be your, obviously, their cup of tea, but here's an example of someone who's done it. So I was lost completely, and when I was younger, had a criminal record even, and I was on a mission for over 10 years to do armored car work, and there's a whole story to that, because I just loved the protocol, and I was on a mission to prove myself, going from having a record, being in trouble with the law, all the way to cleaning up my act, getting my gun license, and being entrusted. That did it for me. And I got my gun license, got the pardon, got all the way there, cleaned up everything, just was a good citizen, in other words. But then, ironically, I did a polygraph for one of the companies. I'm going a little off track, but here's the second example. I did a polygraph for a company, and it came out that I had a prior suicide attempt and had ADHD. So that's its own can of worms. But I had to be honest. You know what I mean? Obviously, that job and integrity is everything. I'm like, well, if they're going to, I'm not going to lie. I'll know that even if I don't get hired, I can look myself in the mirror, and then I honored my path by being honest. It was the principle of it, right? Even if it screwed me in the interview, excuse my language, but it was all about integrity. So, but getting back to the psych ward story, in the groups there, actually helping other people, even though I was in there myself as a patient, there were people that seemed way worse than me. Like they were just lost and couldn't speak, and it I know it sounds odd, but it might anyway, but it broke my heart seeing these people that were barely able to bathe, let alone think, and here I was thinking and going, certainly no shortage of thinking and ability that way. Not to toot my own horn, but I knew, okay, I've got huge potential here and very driven, right? Ironically, I'm failing at everything or quitting, which is my issue. But as soon as we got talking, I immediately, that spark built in me to help others, to just share of my own story, and for them to see my passion, see how I use my hands when I talk, my eyes, to feel it, and to somehow connect them with, asking a lot of questions of them, what they're passionate about, or, regardless, let's say you've been like I was on a 10-year mission for security work, what if you're hanging on, or what if I was hanging on to a dream that, 10 years went by, I wasn't the same person. So sometimes a slight shift I find in perspective, if you ask someone, hey, are you still that same person that wanted to be the NHL player? Are you still the same? Or, is that an old dream you might be clinging to? Even though it feels like, it feels like everything, right? I get it. But are there other areas, other things that you haven't tried, or, that you might be amazing in that you don't know about yet? Wow. And that, I get it. I was going to say, I know that to me, as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, well, that answer isn't very, that's not a perfect answer, Jeff. That may not resonate with people. That may make them feel more lost. But the truth of it is, and again, from experience, as I say on Twitter somewhat, fairly often, I say I couldn't have even known, like the armored car thing was my whole mission for a while, and it blew up, like in a good way, it evolved, I'll use a much better term, into this whole mental health thing, where now I've built a global following, and it's like the most humbling thing ever, where it started with, my story and all about me, of course, to try and help, and that was like therapeutic to me, but now it's way bigger than me, and the stories I'm hearing and other things. And you know what, guys, I'm thinking, I know it's all relative, but man, I've got it so much better than a lot of these people, and my heart goes out to everyone dealing with this stuff, and sometimes I'll hear a young man or woman mention a story or what they're going through, and right away I think back to my old self, and struggles I faced. So it's like, I don't know, I guess there's a message in there. Sometimes the worst moments bring out, if here's the key thing in the catalyst, you cannot give up on yourself and make that permanent decision that my brother did, or that I did, almost, before stopping myself. With, in the suicide attempt, we must not give up, even if we don't know how we're going to put the food on the table. I have things I've done that I'm not proud of to put food on the table. There's stuff there, you know what I mean, way back when. But, yeah, it is what it is. You've got to keep going, and that's what I call a growth mindset. It's a pretty well-known term. But, yeah, and again, guys, I wish I had a better, quicker, easier answer. But
No, hey, you say as much as you have to say. There's not a too short, there's not a too long answer. That's it's all about what you think. So that's definitely, that was fine. One of the things I'd like to say to you though is I really, just listening to the whole story and stuff, I really honor that you basically, not only yourself, but you didn't give up on life, like life in itself. This wasn't only a battle, you versus you, but it was a battle for life too. And you just didn't give up. You just kept going, and it seems like, you've come a long way. You did what you did to kind of get a good handle on this thing. So I definitely want to commend you for that, and just not giving up on life. Just keep going.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, massively. And I'm reminded that, as you say that, it took a lot of, different therapists. It took a lot of, obviously part of why I didn't give up was because of my wife, because of something within myself, because of my dad. I didn't want my dad to lose 3 boys, like the thoughts like that. Everything sort of goes through your head. I remember during the moment when I was, attempting, I remember the same way my brother did, not that matters, the method or anything, obviously, to get too morbid. But I remember my life flashing. I just remember moments, just almost, like a movie where you'd see, a director and just a bunch of pictures flashing with really heavy music and stuff. Right. It all just flashed, and I thought, and there's just something, that's where I get really passionate too sometimes in my Periscope broadcasts and stuff. Something was friggin' born that day within me that I just thought I call it sometimes, and it might sound odd, but I call it a demon for good. It's like this fierce drive, and it was like almost like I'm going to give the middle finger to depression. I'm going to give the middle finger to this stuff. It's not going to take me out. You know what I mean? Like it's intense. I know. That's just how it.
I love it.
And I'm being very censored right now. That's my DNA, right? That's how I do it. But because I used to train in the gym and met guys like Dorian Yates and did steroids briefly and was all intense and was all in that regard, and that was its own issue, but a little too extreme. But yeah, I mean, each of us has our own language. Each of us has our own way of communicating. Mine's just very intense that way. But yeah, that's what it was. It was like, damn it, no, I'm gonna. You can put me in hell, into a vat of concrete, and I'm gonna smash my friggin' way out. And that's all talk and all, and bravado. It sounds like for some, I get it. But yeah,
no, but
that's it.
But
yeah.
You might say that's just talk and that's bravado, but you can't triumph, you can't succeed if you don't have that mindset. I feel like that is huge to have that mindset, and I can just tell just by the way you just said, like, if you're going to put me under concrete, I'm going to smash my way through it. The way you just said that, I can just tell how much it resonates with you, how much, how passionate you feel about all of it. Just by you saying that right there, wow. So, yeah, that's definitely, I just feel like, don't undermine that. Like, you need that mindset. You need to think that way in order to kind of succeed, to kind of overcome, triumph for whatever it is you're going through. I would say almost in anything, too. I feel like that's one thing that people almost, I think, overlook is the mindset that you need to have to get through it. And your mindset, obviously, it seems like, you're there. You're there, and you got a very good handle on it. So that's
yeah, I'm fortunate, and thank you for that too. I'm fortunate. When I'm off the phone, when I'm off the interview, and back to myself, I'm all in that way. That's how I am, and that's the only way I can be. But I'm mindful of the fact that not everyone's that way, of course. So that's why I try to stay humble with it, or whatever the wording is. But you're right. You nailed it. Mindset is everything, and I don't think we're taught. I don't think, frankly, we're taught early enough or often at all where at least when I was growing up in school, there was none of that. Teachers did their best, and I'm not trying to bash anybody, but there's so much that we're not taught about self-psychology, self-care, self-compassion, and it's not in a selfish way, right? It's like, well, if we don't care for ourselves or learn some coping strategies, or, if kids are going through trauma at home, let's say, or anything else, bullying, or just in general self-doubt or anxiety or whatever someone's going through, if they're not learning tools early on, they're going to act out, toward other kids in any number of ways, or just, you know what I mean? So it's like, sometimes I'll talk a lot about care for yourself first. And I fear, on one hand, I fear people may think that's really selfish, but then it's the opposite the way I mean it.
That's,
you know what I mean? So, yeah.
That's so funny, because I've actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book.
Yes. Absolutely.
So I read it. I actually told Tom about this. I highlight, and then I usually, it takes me a long time to read a book, because I'll read it, I'll highlight it, then I'll go back, and I'll write all the highlighted notes down. And I think one of the things that I'm recognizing in the book is basically they talk about, and I have to agree with this, is that once you have a handle on yourself, then a lot of other things around you are good. Like, once you get that handle on yourself, and you're able to, because they talk a lot about mentally talking to yourself and mentally talking yourself out of things, and when people say stuff to you, like why you may possibly think it's true, what you can do to kind of, not to kind of bounce that off and not think about it and know that it's not true. So I think that that's a very important thing. That's so funny, because I was just thinking about it today, that we have to start with ourselves, and then once we start with ourselves, then we can kind of, then we can work, I guess you could almost say, on others, and it makes it much more easier. So I 100% agree with that. It's funny you say that, because I was legitimately, as I said today, just thinking about that and processing that. I agree.
That reminds me, and that's awesome. It's like the filters that we hear through, right, or the self-talk, whatever it is. If I get some troll on Twitter, or and you get, and I love the block button sometimes, but when people, unfortunately, I'll be honest, right? It is what it is, or the mute button now and then, not often, but because I could spend all day talking and debating with someone. But you realize, obviously there comes a point where my energy is best served focusing on the tribe that gets it, right, as opposed to trying to change the person out there who doesn't get it. And I wish them well, and I wish we could talk in a different way. And that's not me being above or anything else. I was once that way in my own way, right? But yeah, you're right. It's the filters. It's the sense of self, identity, all that stuff. So it's there's not any one thing, but I mean that's why I think mentors, or like you said earlier, accountability partners, or whatever works for each person, if they're shown the value of this stuff, and that it's not just, the same old rhetoric, everyone's saying, go all in, or all these catchphrases. It's true, this stuff, but just word it, filter it in your own way that speaks to you. But we got to, obviously, right? But we got to, and then be proud of that. Don't be afraid to be different. That's a whole other thing, with ADHD, let's say, and disability or other stuff. It's like a Band-Aid way of trying to, in one sense, we're going to give kids extra funding because they have a disability, they need a different program maybe, and it's nice that they mean well, but it's also so damaging to the person's, and it doesn't have to be ADHD, it could be, mental health in general, or stigma, perception, like you said, men being afraid to talk. Man, I'm putting my freaking hand up. Let's talk. Let's do it. Even if someone just listens to me and they haven't been taught yet, I totally get it. I feel like I say on one hand, I going back to the gym days, right? I've lifted all the weights. I've done all that stuff. All the maybe not the best form at times, but I was like 18. Doing 110-pound dumbbells for shoulder presses or other things, and all nuts and you know, doing all that stuff. I've done all that stuff, but, you know, I'm also saying on the flip side, you can be the strongest person in the world physically and be broken inside, you know? So it's like, I like to sort of show that, right? You know, it's not all about those, you know, because it's almost like we build, I know I did I was more like a strong man building a bodybuilder, frankly, but it's like a wall, at least that I built up with a lot of anger that was underneath it, a lot of rage toward my mom, a lot of other stuff in my own story. Yeah. And I don't know, I wonder how many people in fitness, you know, I wonder, obviously some folks are the best, coolest, calmest cats out there, but I'm sure there's an element of anger and sort of holding things in, and not just in bodybuilding, but, you know, in men in general. And I know with women, girls and women too, different things, obviously, different set of things, but it's like if we can, I know, obviously I don't have the perfect answer, and there isn't a perfect answer, but we need to keep going, as I say, brick by friggin' brick, to put ourselves out there and be gentle on ourselves. For me, it's reaching out, you know. For you guys, it's whatever your vision evolves into, whether it's working full-time doing this or whatever, you know, if it screams within you or whatever the word is, if it yells within you or if you're passionate about it, right? Use your own wording and friggin' go all in with it, but I mean, it takes time and patience as well. That's the other half, right? Patience, and pivot where you need to. And again, I say all this from experience. Get your support where you can around you. And my wife, I thank God for her. It would have been a much longer road. You know, I'm the first to admit that. So I know we've mentioned a lot of stuff here, as far as tools and mindset and even when you feel lost or you feel, you know, completely disconnected maybe, or, you know, you're racing with anxiety, getting back to yourself, you know, and it sounds simple. Stopping, you know, sometimes I'll just stop, put on music, go for a walk or a workout or whatever, or drive, anything, and just get away from computers, get away from all the noise, and just listen to what speaks to me, you know, whatever it is, you know, and not put limits. Like,
that's actionable, right? Yeah, that's actionable right there, and that's perfect.
Yeah, so it's not, I think kids are set up, if I can throw this in really quick, kids are set up, you know, to look at the media and, you know, if it's someone with the nicest clothes and cars and homes and all that stuff, to think it's a quick ride, or, you know, I listen to a lot of stuff like Gary Vaynerchuk and other people too, where it's Gary V, man. I've talked to him a couple times on Twitter, and I say we're gonna hook up at some time to talk about suicide prevention or join forces or something down the road, maybe 10 years, who knows. But the point is patience, and a lot of stuff he says too is similar to this. He does it in his own way, of course, but you know, and we're not here to copy anyone. We've got to be our own best selves. But we got to learn first, right? Or at least I had to even friggin' believe in myself and to have, you know, some support around me, first of all, before I could really feel like I had the guts to be audacious enough to go for this and speak out openly. So whatever that means for you guys, whatever that means for someone else, giving yourself permission, you know, it's like, before I reach through the phone and, just, you know, fist bump everybody. But yeah, that's what it is. It's inside, you know, and there's obviously like a team, right? Back to hockey. A great coach knows how to channel each individual player's personality and trigger them. You know, you don't approach every player the same, right? So, to get the best out of them, at least the good coaches.
I had my fair share of both, so.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you feel
that. Powerful chat, man. I'm sitting here, like what you're saying, what you're speaking on resonates to me at this exact point in my life. So I can't thank you enough for just, you know, taking time to, you know, talk to us. I mean, I don't want to go too much longer. I mean, I appreciate you giving us even 5 minutes of your time. You've given us an hour, and I think everybody listening is going to grab a nugget, I hope, because I've grabbed about 10 of them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you guys too. And that's, I guess, I'm finding when I do these shows, that it's usually, it opens up into bigger stuff. And I always say to people, take what works for you, toss the rest, right? So I hope there's always a nugget or two or something that people can take away. Even if it's, often the best stuff is the simplest stuff that we need to be reminded of. And again, everything as I'm saying all this and talking the talk, it's all from my own lived experience. So it's 100% authentic, that's for sure. So yeah, thank you guys for having me again. Very much appreciative.
Yeah. Eric,
no problem.
You want to wrap it up with the grind?
Yeah, sure. So, Jeff, at the end of every podcast episode, we like to, basically nominate a person that we feel exemplifies, just it can be just the person at the gas station that just, as soon as you walk in the door, smiles at you and greets you and just makes you feel so welcome, or the lady at the food store who's bagging your stuff and she's just so, so polite and she's just get that smile and you say to yourself, oh my God, like she may not be making a ton of money or he may not be making a ton of money, but he is definitely changing people's lives in the way that he carries him or herself every day and just inspiring people, motivating people. So we call this the grinder of the week. And I think, Tom can definitely agree with me we're going to have to nominate you this week for the grinder of the week, just because, your story, it's so powerful, it's so motivational and inspirational that I just, you're definitely the grinder of the week. There's just nobody else that we would want to nominate on this episode than you. So, you've taken the prize of grinder of the week this week.
Thank you. It's an honor. I appreciate that very much. It's, as you're saying all that, being incredibly kind. I'm just thinking of my own journey and now how ironically, it's all for reaching others in any way, shape, or form. So full circle. So thank you guys, and it's an honor. Anything I can do, again, just keep in touch and thank you.
Absolutely, we'll be in touch. We're definitely not going away. Our journey's just starting, but we're so fortunate to have you on here. So once again, man, we appreciate everybody out in the audience too. I mean, we always like to say thank you to the people that jump on and give their attention to us. You listen to Gary V, we listen to Gary V. For people to give their time to listen to an episode, we know it's an hour long, but even if somebody jumps on here for 5 minutes at any point, I think they would gather some value. So, for you to just be humble enough to jump on, we can't really reiterate it enough to just keep saying thank you. So, I won't beat a dead horse, but thanks again, Jeff. You're an awesome guy. You're doing some great work.
Wow, thank you. Hey, and we all play our part, right? We all do our part, play our role, whatever. It's not long ago, again, 4 years ago, that I was in a much different place. So as I say now, and maybe this will resonate as well, no matter how big you get with things or shows or anything else, you remember why you started, right?
Definitely, yes.
Differentiator, right? So stay true, authentic. And you can, and that's the beauty. I think more and more future generations are going to see through the fake stuff and go to those who are really doing the amazing work for humanity, whatever it is. Keep going just if it again, I'll use the word screams. If it screams within you or calls you, just keep going all in with it. Whatever you need to do bit by bit through frustration, ups, downs, sideways. Things change, things evolve, right? As I know in hindsight. But you keep going on, what you learn, you pivot. If one thing doesn't work, okay, what's another way? It's like an endless adventure or journey. It doesn't feel like an adventure sometimes, right? But that's what I would say to anyone in the audience too. Thank you for listening and just keep friggin' going brick by brick by brick by brick, learning and even and when the chips are down and despair, you're going through it or whatever else, just keep going. as long as you're breathing, again, cliche sounding, but as long as you're breathing, you've got access to the internet or to other people, there's always a way. There's always, I sound like I'm repeating a lot of this stuff, but I look back. This is what saved me, man. This is why I'm where I am, and I'm just getting started. So thank you guys again, man. Just iron will, right? So,
right.
And again, that came from the worst moments. So even when I felt horrible and weak and exhausted and in despair and anxiety and depression and rage toward myself for screwing up so much and turning into suicidal thoughts, it turned around and whoosh, like now it's the rest of my life. So, there's light at the end of the tunnel if we just listen, and even if you don't believe it fully within, just, not fake it till you make it, obviously, but you know what? Know that someone else is doing it, so you could find, there's hope. There's hope that you can find your triggers, your way, your ingredients to that level of self-awareness. And man, when you find that, it's like, you're on your way. So, and challenges will always come. If I can throw that in there, challenges will always come. It's the mindset. It's, having been through this and faced death myself, I can say, I don't care what comes next, because I'm going to deal with it, and like you guys said earlier, when you're self-aware, other things, you can deal with them a lot easier, even if it's the worst moments. So, honor yourself, trust in yourself.
Awesome,
Jeff. Well, thank you again, and we'll be in touch over social media, and hope to obviously cross paths physically and shake your hand and just obviously say thank you in person. But if you're ever in Charlotte, if you're ever in Boston, we'll definitely. I'm in Charlotte currently. Eric's in Boston, so if you're ever in one of those locations, and feel free to reach out. We'd love to meet up. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to being in both spots actually. So. Absolutely. Yeah, let's keep in touch.
And we're going to link up. I don't know if you have, and I'll just say it now, if you can shoot over a link to all of your outlets, if you have it in a Word document, we'd love to be able to give you credit in the YouTube description, and that way get the cross-linking and make sure you get your, because I'm personally going to buy a copy of the book, and we actually have a book.
Definitely.
So we have that on our list as a book that we're going to read through in our monthly book club, so we'd love to, we'll do like a live stream, and then we can even, just, I don't know, who knows where that's going to go, but we definitely want to support the channel when we can, so.
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, let me know what you think of the book as well. We can obviously delve deeper into that if you want to go specific into the book, the ADHD side and the bigger picture of it, because we really put it under a microscope, the bigger picture. So yeah, we can do that as well. And let me know what you think, and thank you for, it was about, I'd say 4 years once we figured out what the topic would be, 4 years of research and 4 years of, even at one point, again, being in the mental health unit before I came back to it, and like hell and high water. So it took everything. It took a ton to put together. So it would be an honor to hear what you guys think of it, and I hope it brings you value and resonates. Yeah,
definitely. I'm sure it will bring us a ton. So
awesome. Okay.
All right, Jeff. Well, thank you.
Right.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.